Ask yourself, who's the?
Damn.
Fuck all y'all.
Hold on, hold on, buddy. I'm more than just, movies that, I did music at one point.
Now, for the longest time, I've wondered whether or not I was going to review Ice Cube on my channel. Well, here we are. All my life, Ice Cube has always stuck out to me as an actor rather than a rapper. In fact, for the longest time, throughout my entire childhood, I didn't really think he was ever a rapper at all in his life. That's when I realized, getting older and listening to NWA and his solo records, that I was a fucking idiot. Now, definitely, it also made me wonder whether or not his prime was in the 90s, which is true, by the way. 90s were his best time, especially like the early 90s. Now, as someone who's not opposed to critically assessing music that's like more niche, it would make even less sense to tell you that I actually enjoyed a lot of stuff that Ice Cube actually made during the early to mid 90s. While he's had a lot of controversy, and I will get into that later, I take a lot of his stuff he has said about women, religion, and so on and so forth with a grain of salt, because that was a different time. And that is why I'll be taking you through his 1991 release, Death Certificate.
You are now about to witness the strength of street knowledge.
It's the late 1980s, and Compton was booming with the newest group in hip-hop, NWA. They were the group that put Compton on the map with their approach to a style known as gangsta rap. Now, there wasn't any other group that was like them at this time. Sure as hell wasn't Run DMC in New York. NWA was more gritty, more vulgar, and most of all, had bangers. I mean, who doesn't know Straight Outta Compton and Fuck the Police? I mean, clear statements of the realities of being black in the areas that they grew up in. Now, as I listened to their stuff, specifically their debut, I thought most of the highlights came from the songwriting side of things. The deep cuts and the album overall wasn't that great, but overall it was a landmark release, culturally speaking. Kept gaining success, they went on tour, they got the FBI involved for one of their songs, and then money, which was the ticket to their downfall. Now, as money started to truly trickle in, Ice Cube thought that the money didn't equate to his contributions. He was suspicious of the deal being managed with those records and their manager, Jerry Heller, at the time. He wanted legal advice before signing a new contract, but he felt like he was being asked to accept terms that didn't fairly compensate him for his role in the group. It was too small of a contract and proposed payment, so he decided to walk away from the group entirely. But that's just the thing. It wasn't just about the money. It ultimately came down to trust. He felt that Jerry Heller was only looking out for himself and Eazy-E more than the rest of the group, seeing the business relationship as unfair. Now, Heller would deny these allegations, but even if people would speak out on it, or whether or not that stuff is true, the damage was already done. Because my audience is much older, at least older than 25, I'm sure some of you, maybe a few of you, might remember on why and how Ice Cube leaving NWA was such a big deal. I mean, being the most talked about rap group in America, having a reputation as one of the most dangerous groups in rap, and being very influential. You're gonna just leave like that? In real time, I can understand that frustration in retrospect. No, there probably weren't a lot of names at the time that branched out from their former group and saw immediate success. I mean, the only ones I can really think of personally are, from the top of my head, would have to be Lou Reed after leaving the Velvet Underground, and Beyonce after leaving Destiny's Child. Even I had the same question before I went to Ice Cube's solo material, is that did he really make it on his own? Sure, he was one of NWA's main songwriters, but for it to be mostly him on an entire record, that was a huge risk that he was willing to take. So what did he make?
Make you wanna go and get more cash. He's getting rich.
Now, after he had left his former group, they still had the rest of their members and brand. So now the question is this: did Ice Cube leave something great? I would say no. The question should be, did NWA lose a crucial member? And to that, I say they very much did. His debut, America's Most Wanted, released in 1990, was a major success. It reached number 19 on the Billboard 200, went to gold status within weeks, and went on to earn platinum status. It's crazy because it showed that he didn't need NWA as a safety net. Before I keep going on about this record, I need to mention the connections to the Lynch Mob. Now, after he had left NWA, he decided to build an entire ecosystem around him by starting his own label, later known as Lynch Mob Records. Now, it would develop artists like Yo-Yo and Del the Funky Homo Sapien, you know, same guy who did the rap verse on Clint Eastwood by Gorillaz. Members of the group included JD, T-Bone, Shorty, and Yo-Yo. The group later released their own album, Gorillas in the Mist, with Ice Cube as executive producer. I mean, there's literally a whole song called Rollin' with the Lynch Mob from his debut. Now, America's Most Wanted was less about shock value and gangster rap and more focused on themes such as race, street narratives, political commentary, media criticism, and social issues. Now, this led him to become one of hip-hop's leading political voices. Something that has surprised me when I was doing my research for this video is that he teamed up with the Bomb Squad production team, the same producers that made Public Enemy's It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back. Hold on, let me get this straight. You're telling me that Ice Cube teamed up with the production team that made one of the best albums of the 1980s? Okay. One, his debut is pretty good. I mean, Who's the Mac has always been one of my favorite cuts from it. What also fascinates me is the fact that Ice Cube did not mention anyone from NWA, not even once. For the longest time, I thought he always said Dre, but instead he was actually saying Train. Now sure, there are some samples from that era here and there, but he was building a clear identity for himself. He did other things like acting in the movie Boys in the Hood, which is a good film, you should go watch it, which expanded his audience beyond just mere rap fans. That opened the doors into Hollywood, which eventually led him to star in the film Friday, which is also quite a hilarious film. Okay, then came the making of the album. Now Cube wanted something that felt more like Los Angeles. Leaning on his longtime collaborator Sir Jinx, along with the Boogeyman production team, this record would be a concept that divided itself into two halves. One side being the death, and the other side being the life. The timing around this album could have been more intense, and considering everything that has transpired thus far, I mean, another tragic event that fueled this album was the unfortunate beatings of Rodney King from the LAPD around the time. I'm not opposed to talk about topics like this when it comes to music, but we'll come back to that later. But Cube would take more creative control as executive producer, reflecting lessons he had learned while working with Public Enemy and Chuck D. The record had two proper singles, and for the sake of time, I'll go through these two songs, and I won't mention them while I'm going through the album itself, so I'll mention it here before the album. This was the first lead single from the project, and it's just so damn good. I mean, it's not political like the rest of the album, but it's more about the neighborhood. He's painting a vivid picture of life in South Central Los Angeles, hanging out with his homies, cruising through the city, dealing with rival neighborhoods, and navigating through everyday street life. I can at the very least appreciate that he knew to not get political with every song. Personally, whenever some of my favorite artists speak on the Times, it usually does not go over very well. He does go into some touchy subjects on the record, but we'll get into that later. I absolutely love the sound of the track.
Busting caps in the mix, rather be judged by 12 than carried by 6.
It was news to me that it incorporates samples, just like with the rest of this record. It incorporates like numerous like funk samples, soul samples that I would not have known if I would have done this video. It's the shots of horns that makes it so catchy, and the chorus is the best part. The vocals sort of make it soulful in a way. While I was writing this, I began to wonder why this was such a good move by Ice Cube. Let me get this. If he had led with No Vaseline, the entire album would have been about the feud, which reminds me that NWA had already made an interesting diss towards Cube back in 1990 with 100 Miles and Running. Because it involves No Vaseline, it's better to save this last because it's the closer to this record. Now, just like with any other hit he had with this laid back vibe, he still has so much swag. I mean, it's such a pretty good slice of life story along with a music video for it. I mean, the beginning feels surprisingly fitting because before the song on the record is My Summer Vacation, which ends with a police altercation as the song begins with one. Also, can somebody please keep count how many times he says the bigger the cap, the bigger the peeling? Please. Like, I know it's probably just a few times saying he's always known for. I think he's saying a lot more than it actually is. Okay, so that was that. What was the next single? A good old song about selling out. One, I think that saying that selling out is kind of a lazy criticism towards any artist or media outlet. Being about authenticity is something that Ice Cube is communicating, criticizing successful black figures who he had felt that abandoned their communities, changed their image, or softened themselves to appeal to mainstream audiences. I sort of understand this angle from Cube. I mean, seriously, like, he was seen as a threat, and he wasn't mainstream to the people who were playing it safe, like the artists who merged with New Jack Swing at the time. Now, I kind of like this way of conveying your message about people chasing money, status, and acceptance at the expense of their identity and principles. Hip-hop was only getting started with becoming a major cultural force by this point in music history. On the record, this appears on the life side. He's trying to present a solution to tell you that community, loyalty, and self-determination should be our priority. The track sounds just as laid back as the previous one, but just times two.
Nothing but a come up. but ain't that a trip?
Then there's a music video for it which reinforces overall themes. Now it got me thinking about one person that he knew, Eazy-E, and not just him but his former group at large, but mostly Eazy-E. He did not strike me as someone who could talk that shit and back it up. Sure, he had a lot of damn good bars when during NWA's heyday. Maybe here's the thing, money didn't change Ice Cube or even Dr. Dre, because even he will go on to regret dissing Ice Cube and would later leave the group to make The Chronic, which established the grounds for G-Funk in the early 90s. Now that we've gotten over that and what he did between his second single and album release, it was finally released on October 29th, 1991. Damn, it's 3 days after my birthday. So before I dive into this record, I'll mention one last thing. I won't go into the interludes and the songs that I just covered, but for the sake of time, I make this clear anytime there's some interludes or tracks that aren't really songs. With all that out of the way, let's dive into the track list. This is gonna be a long ass video. Jesus Christ.
Damn, it's a brand new payback. From the straight gangsta, Mac and straight gangsta.
Okay, the title should be enough to tell you that you shouldn't fuck with Ice Cube, point blank period. Now this feels like a continuation to the opener to his previous record. The beat itself is just as heavy as this one. Mind you, Cube was already seen as the traitor and ruining something great, and I beg to differ. Now I understand that NWA and what they did were important and influential, but my god, a lot of that credit should go to Ice Cube's writing. His delivery is very aggressive and sounds like a victory lap of sorts. It does seem like a threat on the surface, but let's be honest, who is really bodying Ice Cube by this point in his career? The people who were praying for his downfall had failed. I think that the song being about independence is strong here. Sure, he had the lynch mob rallying behind him, but it was built around him. That was his ecosystem. This song comes right after the funeral and serves as an entry into the death side of the record. Now Cube is already dissing genres like R&B, punk, and New Jack Swing. Now dissing genres like this, I think shows his feelings a little bit about these genres to some degree, while not explicitly explained in the song. I think it should be taken into consideration. Well, that was the opener, and it's a great time, but that's just one of many bangers on this record.
Police looking at niggas through a microscope in LA.
What I can say is that this is one of his best storytelling tracks, hands down. I guess that we're at an airport of sorts, but get this, there's a story. Now, there's a group of South Central LA drug dealers who leave because of police pressure, making business difficult, resulting them in flying to St. Louis for new opportunities, and ended up bringing LA gang culture with them. What started out as a business trip spiraled into violence, police attention, and eventually prison. So this wasn't an ideal summer vacation. It was just a troubled one at best. Now, it's something much bigger than a fictional story in the song. Now, around the late 80s and early 90s, law enforcement and journalists were increasingly discussing how LA gangs were appearing in cities across the country. There was even a mock news report in the song describing gangs from South Central migrating to other states. When that sample hits, it gets fucking going. Like, that funk vibe makes this shit a banger to my ears. It's like that bass, that fucking funk bass, oh Christ. Like, part of what makes it cool is the grim story alongside with the killer production.
Nuts, sorta like a hummingbird sucking up the lynch mob crew, and I'm coming back.
Why is this so great? No, seriously, why? Why is this track so vulgar, yet it's still very much a hit to my ears? Because I asked that because for the longest time, since I listened to it for the first time, it's been like a guilty pleasure of mine. It centers on his frustrations with relationships, trust, and sexual politics. It leans into a cynical perspective towards women and dating, presenting him as someone who has become hardened by negative experiences. I think it should raise some concern because it does involve a minor, but he thinks it's justified because they got her on tape. No. God, is it so bad that I think the song is so good, if not great? There was, of course, controversy around the song, and for good reason. Now, it drew criticism for his treatment towards women. Retrospective reviews have often singled it out as one of the album's most difficult to listen to, arguing that it contains some of the most harshest and most problematic viewpoints. Now, I think multiple things can be true at once. Now, I still enjoy the song for what it is and not so much for its narrative. I understand that this isn't a comfortable listen on the surface, and anything involving minors shouldn't be taken lightly. It's an example of how wild the world of hip-hop was at one point, because it's the fucking 90s. That was a crazy time as a society, point blank period. Now, this song is part of a much broader portrait of anger, distrust, and social dysfunction. Jesus Christ, that song was rough. Okay, here's another slice of life track. It's an interesting story for what it is. It tells a cautionary tale about sexual recklessness and its consequences. It's delivered through humor, exaggeration, and embarrassment to drive the point home. It's a reflection of the problems and destructive behaviors he saw around him. Now, I swear, the chorus feels a little out of place. It makes me feel like I'm in a fucking barn. This one is a lot more subtle in comparison to the last track. This being on the death side of the record, it's intentionally portraying the worst reinforce impulses and mistakes within the community. Now, it sounds like that there was a lot of heavy sample material, like I mentioned earlier with the rest of this record, pulling from funk, soul, and classic hip-hop records. There's not a lot to say about the production. I guess you can say it's one-dimensional. It does get away with it because of the horns, metallic clangs, and that cowbell on the chorus. It's not trying to be profound like other tracks. I think it's just trying to be lighthearted in the face of discussing problems that need to be addressed. Oh god, I can't stand this song. Well, it starts with something that reminds me of cartoons, and as much as I love to be intact in my inner child imagination, it sounds like a leftover from his debut. With all of those disc scratches and its delivery, oh god, you should have just left this on America's Most Wanted. Now, it tells the story of a young black man who graduates from high school, becomes a father, and tries to find legitimate work. Over time, he quickly discovers that those opportunities are limited and don't pay enough to provide for his child. Now, the title comes from the proverb, "A bird in the hand is worth two in the bush." Cube twists this saying into a political punchline. Now, through the song, we start losing faith that politicians or government programs will solve his problems, but he ultimately chooses immediate income over promises of future help. On a deeper level, it's actually about economic depression. He argues that society leaves the narrator with very few realistic paths forward. I believe that this speaks to the circumstances that black people are put into in this country and making choices within a system that he sees as stacked against him. I get the narrative, but I still think that it does not go over all that well.
Cause if you run up and try to play mine, I'd rather have an AK.
Oh, thank God. Oh, thank God. We got back on track. Knowing a little bit more about the song, it's sort of connected to the previous one. It's about how he constantly feels threatened by crime and violence around him. In short, he probably has anxiety, guys. Now, it plays on the title being an old saying that the dog is a man's best friend, but relies more on an AK than a fucking canine. That line was so clever. No, the way it connects to the previous track is when someone turns to the drug trade and opportunities seem closed off and could dive into paranoia and anger that can follow from that world. Now, it confronts the realities of fear and violence. It asks what happens to people when they feel they have to be on guard all the time. Now we're right at the moment of conclusion of the life side on the record. Now, it's seen as one of the greatest narrative achievements on this album. I don't see it. Please, someone convince me on why that is. Now look, that's just a personal opinion, but I think the song is fine. It follows the story of someone who gets caught in a shooting at a neighborhood gathering. Initially, he doesn't realize he's been hit until he runs away and notices blood on his shirt. Then he blacks out. The rest of the song follows his journey through the hospital system afterwards. The overall production is fine, but it's the glitchy sound effects for me that don't land. It kills my ears every time I put it on. Now, the overall narrative of the cut doesn't end at the hospital. It eventually becomes a critique of institutional neglect. He portrays a healthcare system that seems overwhelmed and indifferent to his suffering. While the narrative is a great concept, the production is a mixed bag. Oh, one of my favorite tracks on the record, and it may be the best one. Now, this is a very politically charged track that references to the symbol of the United States government, Uncle Sam. Now, he uses this symbol as a metaphor for centuries of oppression, exploitation, and broken promises experienced by Black Americans. Now, it jumps across multiple references such as slavery, taxation, racism, and government neglect. He presents these themes in chapters in one story, arguing that Sam has been exploiting Black Americans for centuries while demanding loyalty in return. This was another controversial track, and it's very obvious why that is. The title itself shocked many people around this time. Some critics viewed it as inflammatory, while others saw it as a powerful expression of frustration and protest. I've always appreciated songs like this because even today, we still have people thinking that Black people are the problem. I usually don't like it when it comes to certain artists speaking on political themes, but here I think Ice Cube gets away with that very well. Now, the production on here is fantastic. I love the horns, I love the chorus, and it gets me going like I'm in a fucking mosh pit. It does fit on a track like this, and on Dear of Our Lord 2026, I think songs like this are still needed more than ever.
Now, going back to the song,
It's one of the most revealing songs about his politics. Now, it plays as a symbolic character rather than a certain individual. He uses the figure as a stand-in for what he saw as historical exploitation and racial oppression. Lyrically, it's heavily influenced by ideas circulating within the Nation of Islam during that period, which emphasized black self-determination, racial separatism, and suspicion of white institutions. This was another controversial track because of racial hostility, homophobic language, and violent imagery. Now, going back to that now, just a few years later after listening to it for the first time, that just definitely just flew over my head. This does showcase where he was politically in 1991. He became interested in black nationalism and the Nation of Islam teachings around this time. Now, the chorus is fine, mostly because of the refrain of saying, I'm so horny. Like, it's, God, like, it really does not go over well. The production is cool, it's fine. Sort of has the same quality as the last track. Now, look, the homophobic language and remarks on the track is something I take with a grain of salt. It still marks as one of my least favorite tracks here. Here we have the shortest track, and it's not even an interlude. One thing that I didn't know about the song was that it revolves around Korean immigrants. I mean, I should have known because it says Korea in the title, but just like with the last track, it just flew over my head. With many Korean immigrants scattered across Los Angeles, was a lot of issues with that. There was cultural and language barriers, economic inequality, and questions about who benefited financially from the neighborhood. Now, the biggest point was the killing of Latasha Harlins in March 1991. So what happened is that after the store owner received probation instead of prison time, many black citizens in Los Angeles viewed the outcome as another example of the justice system that valued black lives less. It became one of the defining racial controversies in Los Angeles before the 1992 riots. This is Ice Cube coming from a place of frustration. It's a direct message to Korean-owned businesses, arguing that some merchants profit from black communities while failing to respect the people who live there. Understanding that now, I can't help but think that he's making a bit of a hasty generalization to some degree, and does ring a little hollow to some degree at least. As far as the production goes, it's another dud. It does not stick well with me after 10 seconds.
Do these fools got a problem with me, or do they got love?
Oh God, it's the worst track on the record. Now, Ice Cube does sound a little disengaged with the premise. However, I can get why that is. No, it's not just him on the track. There's a large cast of West Coast rappers here, including Coolio, Cam, JD, King T, and much more. The song is a reference to gang colors. Gang affiliation was often signaled through colors, and those colors would become reasons for violence. Now, Cube opens with a tense story. He stops at a traffic light wherein a car of men pulls up next to him. Unsure of their intentions, he prepares for the worst. As the situation unfolds, he realizes there aren't enemies. This leads to the song's central themes. Don't assume that someone's an enemy because of the colors they wear of the neighborhoods that they're from. Now, I can understand why it appears on the life side on this project. In the grand scheme of things, it's one of the least, if not the most uninteresting song to some degree on here. Now, the production does not do the song justice in my opinion in this format, because being a posse cut, I could easily take or leave. During a time when that was a major concern, I understand why there were many other rappers on here. On the surface, everything I told you flew over my head, and honestly, it took me a while to get hooked of the narrative of the cut.
When I was young, I used to hang with the...
Now, this is one of the most overlooked songs, but I can see why that is to an extent. It's a critique of self-destructive behavior within the black community. Regardless of what people has gone through in the past, still should be held accountable when warranted. It's the one song on here that does that, and I actually appreciate it. It's connected to the last track after, which was a call for unity, and this one focuses on responsibility. But the production isn't something to write home about. It does sound rough around the edges. To me, sounds like another leftover from his debut, and it would have been better for it. It does come from a place of concern and frustration about his own community. Over time, it has gained like a cult reputation. Is it a strong deep cut in my opinion? I guess it's fine if I'm not paying attention to the content.
At each other after having brew. We can't enjoy ourselves.
Another dud. Jeez fucking Christ. These deep cuts do not hold up. The song is sort of response to what was being asked in the last two tracks, by returning to the idea that progress becomes difficult when a community is divided against itself. I don't mind the production. It's quite catchy most of the time. I just don't like how the piano is just thrown in there, and the chorus is cool, nothing special. Just like with many deep cuts, at least the narrative makes sense. It's like the final statement to the black community. Most of the record points the problems from external factors. This one points it at itself. This is where Cube argues that real change requires not only challenging outside systems, but also confronting the problems from within. Many people have considered it underrated, and I actually agree with that when it comes to the narrative, not really much of the production.
I ain't say shit about them on America's Most Wanted. Now they trying to diss?
Set it off. Used to be hard, now you just went.
Yes, yes. Finally, I've waited for so long. Jesus Christ, we took so long to get here. It's been a trudge to get through this deep cuts. God, it took me a while to get here, but we're at the end of the record. God, I haven't made a video like this in a while. Now, if you're a fan of hip hop, you should know about this incredible diss track. No Vaseline is widely regarded as one of the greatest diss tracks in hip hop history, and I could not agree more. Now, this was a response to his former group NWA, as I've already mentioned earlier, but Ice Cube was already fed up with how money was being handled. He left no stone unturned and responded to all of them. Some were more torched than others, but the main culprits to me were Eazy-E and Jerry Heller. All in all, he dismantled all of them all at once, which was almost unheard of at the time. He portrays Jerry Heller as the person responsible for dividing the group and taking advantage of its members. He argues that his former bandmates chose loyalty to management over loyalty to each other. Now, what makes it so much better to me, especially because the song is gonna turn 40 years old soon, is that Ice Cube does not regret anything he said on the song a ton of years later. And can someone please keep count of how many times I've said the word controversy? But the song does contain homophobic insults and anti-Semitic remarks directed at Jerry Heller. Understandably, it was heavily criticized. Now, is it still bad that I'm still willing to rap alongside with it? Because some of those remarks are more subtle than I think people are giving it credit for. The production is amazing. It has that stripped back groove like with some of the other tracks on the record. To me, I think that it cements him as someone that you don't want to fuck with. That's just it. That's always been the case. Even when he was with NWA, he was just finally able to vent all of his justified frustrations. Now, he snuffed out any chance of NWA continuing as a group and as a brand going forward. Its influence is undeniable. That set a new standard for rap beefs and one of the most devastating diss tracks. This is clearly the best song on this record. Thank you, Ice Cube, for your service. Okay, that was Death Certificate. Yeah, this was, I'm not gonna lie, quite difficult to get through because as I'm writing this, it has taken me over 3 days to do so because there was quite a few things I was rocking my creative output, but that's besides the point. The point is that Ice Cube had fully cemented his place as a solo artist. There was a lot of tracks that I think are still important on this project that are important to this day, and I don't think they've aged poorly, especially with a lot of the underlying messages. The deep cuts still do not sit well with me, though I understand how they play into the overall narrative of the record. Yeah, it's a classic hip-hop record, one I would still recommend, especially if you're looking for something that's not going to sugarcoat anything, which is why I'll give this an A. Given the material from the record, I thought this was only polarizing critically and commercially. It did see a lot of success. In its first week, it got a lot of commercial success. It debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200, selling around over 100,000 copies in its first week. It also debuted number 1 on Billboard's top R&B and hip hop albums chart, which was surprising to me given its political themes. It only took 2 months for the record to go platinum, and it would eventually sell 2 million copies in the United States. Considering that there was little to no radio support, controversy, criticisms from the media, and no major pop crossover hit, makes the success of the album mean a lot more. The critical reception though was polarizing. Some critics condemned parts of the record as inflammatory and offensive. Others praised it as a powerful expression of anger, frustration, and political commentary. Culturally, this was a defining act. It's seen as one of the defining albums of the West Coast, influential political hip-hop record, cemented him as a solo act, as I mentioned earlier, and home to one of the most iconic diss tracks ever. Damn, I haven't made a video like this in a while. Yeah. But let it be known that I also like records like this. Jesus Christ, it took me a minute to record this, because she's got this fucking camera. This goddamn camera was goddamn fucking buffering. Okay, what was I saying? Oh, that's right. Ice Cube does continue after this. I mean, should I do another video on Ice Cube? I mean, because I think some of his other material are worth critically examining. That's the video. I mean, I hope y'all enjoyed the video. This took me a minute to make. I mean, and as always, I'll see you next video. Cue the outro music.
Duty to cuss 'em out 'cause I just don't trust 'em. And if you tell